Oh, it says I'm live. Can you see me? Outside. Oh, there I am. That's not bad, huh? I think I'm going to record this and then post it at 3 o'clock and keep doing my chores and having a day here. Sorry I won't be live today, but I am live now. And I am home, and it is a gorgeous day. It is Monday, July 6th, 2020. Really spectacular out here on Block Island. And I'm presenting right now Frankenstein Tea, daily program from the Island Free Library with me, Kristen. I'm the director of the Island Free Library. And this is a program where we stay connected to each other. And it has a few premises, but most importantly, it's how we're going to stay connected to each other. We're going to continue to do this program. We did it during shelter in place. We've done it since then. We're going to continue to do it. On Block Island, we just had another positive test case. And so medical center is asking people to stay home, and I talked to that yesterday, right? The Block Island pause. So, the medical center is encouraging people to take care of themselves. And so that may look like different things for different people. But we at the library know that there are some of our patrons who just prefer to stay home. And that's how they're taking care of themselves. So here's a way for you to stay connected to the library and stay home. It's an adult program. I do it every day at 3 o'clock. I'm not usually outside, and I'm not sure how it's working. To me, it sounds like the birds are chirping, lawnmowers are going, planes are flying, saws are buzzing, birds are really noisy. But maybe it's fine for you. I don't know. I'm going to read you a short story. I'm going to post it, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I'm reading from Tales from an Island by J. Stella Saunier. Saunier. Tales from an Island. This is, Fables. Jeepers. Fables from an Island. It was published in 1981 by the author on Block Island. And I'm going to read you a selection from here, a short story from Fables from an Island, not Tales, Fables, called The Pear Tree. How's this? Is this all right? You got me? All right, here we go. The Pear Tree. Spring had been late and wet this year after a punishing winter, and the brushwood in the swampy hollow behind the two houses had remained dark and somber. After the shad trees had their fling, brightening the island and men's hearts with their delicate bloom, suddenly the pear tree blossomed. It was spectacular. Against the knobby, rain-blackened boughs, a pyramid of dainty flowers opened to the misty air, lighting the hollow as though 1,000 votive candles had been lighted in the penumbral shadows of a dim cathedral. It was a pity that, growing where it did, it was hidden from the men's eyes and bloomed only for the questionable pleasure of the two dour men who now scowled at it from the upper stories of their two houses. In their heyday, the houses had been named the Lucky Farms, on an island where people had perforce to depend on their neighbors in all sorts of ways. The families occupying the farms had enjoyed a remarkable rapport. The fortunate children in these families had, as far back as the memory of the oldest villager could recall, two of everything. 2 homes, 2 tracts of land to explore, 2 mothers, 2 fathers, 2 sets of grandparents. Whatever differences occurred between the neighbors had been trivial. Further, they complemented each other. One farm had a vast tract of flat land ideal for farming. The other had gentle hills more suitable for grazing, and the two families lent each other the use of their property. So, for a number of generations, all had been peaceful. When the two men had been born, they were named John and Jeremy because their fond mothers liked the way the names sounded together. Only months apart in age, the two boys became inseparable. When they were in grammar school, a county agent brought a gift of fruit trees for the children of the island. John and Jeremy planted theirs on the hummock in the swamp, since their families, like all islanders, scornful of ideas brought from the mainland, would not allow them yard room for the trees. After they had been planted, they were forgotten. During World War II, the boys joined up, John in the Navy and Jeremy in the Coast Guard. Both were wounded, both returned home and settled into their lives as civilians. They married two pretty, industrious girls who were best friends, and the legend seemed to go on undisturbed. John and Mary gave birth to John J., and Jeremy and Lila had May. It would have been better had the two men served in the same branch of the service, for their arguments over the relative merit of their respective outfits sometimes became a bit hotter than the two women liked. Mary and Lila each secretly thanked God that their children were not of the same sex, or there might have been a further source of contentious comparison between the two men. Finally, one day in the spring of the year that the children were to start school, the attention of the two families was attracted to a blossoming tree on the hummock in the swamp. The two men decided to investigate, and donning fishing boots against the squashy mud, they beat their way over the marsh grass and brambles until they reached the hummock. They saw that it was a pear tree, taller than the men and covered with flowers. Gradually, the memory returned of the two trees planted side by side almost 20 years before. But where was the second tree? It was nowhere to be found. They reasoned that they had planted them too close together and that the sturdier had squeezed the other out of existence. In the fall, they garnered the delicious fruit and divided it equally to be made into pies and preserves. The choicest pears to be carefully wrapped and stored in the root cellar to be given as gifts. All seemed to proceed as before, but the question of ownership of the tree began to rankle. What made it particularly annoying was that the boundary line was involved. Since a huge boulder was the marker at the rear of the two properties, it was almost impossible to decide which side the tree was on. A line drawn from the center of the rock bisected the tree, yet the men thought each had planted on his own property. How was the line to be drawn? More than the tree was in question. The boulder was some 15 feet across. This created a wedge-shaped piece of land some 1,000 feet long, 15 feet at the rear, meeting at a piece of pipe in the front. Each claimed the land. It was not the land, useless for the most part, nor the pear tree, for each property had other fruit trees. It was a principle at issue, and nothing will excite people like a threat to their principles, so often a matter of stubborn pride or other irritations. Matters went from bad to worse until all relations ceased. The women, children, and grandparents were forbidden to have any dealings with the other family. Gradually, the path between the two houses that many footsteps had formed over the years became overgrown with grass. The families avoided each other at public functions, and the fruit of the pear tree rotted on the ground. Everyone suffered, but the two men had created between them. The children, who had grown to adolescence, petted and loved by both families, felt the change most keenly. As soon as they finished high school, they left the island to train for and pursue careers on the mainland, away from the unpleasant fathers. On this year in question, the youngsters were in their middle 20s, both well launched on their callings, neither of them married. They had not kept in touch over the years, yet they had both decided to come home for a short vacation at the same time. They also, led by some unseen hand, made their way to the pear tree and met under its heavily laden branches. It was an extraordinary meeting. A soft breeze blew, wafting the fragrance of the falling petals over them. In the thicket, a quail called to its mate. The humming of bees was the only other sound. They looked appraisingly at each other and both felt a marvelous homecoming, the void in their lives miraculously filled. They laughed, threw their arms around each other, and kissed heartily. Then they sat down and had a long, long talk. That night at supper, each announced that there would be a meeting the next morning, Sunday, at Jeremy's house. The fathers protested and were quickly silenced by the wives, who had at last found the courage to rebel. When the parents and grandparents had been seated about the table, where a huge coffee pot stood with coffee mugs and pitchers of thick cream, platters heaped high with homemade donuts, the young man addressed the group. "We have decided to give you all a choice," he said, careful not to single out John and Jeremy, who sat at opposite ends of the table, sullenly ignoring each other. "Since we're your only heirs, May and I, we figure you can give us the hummock to build our house on under the pear tree. I've already got a job at the school come September, and May here is working on getting the state to appoint her town nurse. Or," May added darkly, "we'll be your Romeo and Juliet. Only we don't aim to kill ourselves. Instead, we'll go off and get married and never, never come back." Stunned, the assembled families simply stared. Finally, John cleared his throat and said, "But John Jay, you hardly know each other." "No," John Jay answered, "it's not quite so. It seems a long, long time ago, but our silly fathers have only been quarreling for a few years." He mitigated his remark with a slow smile at his father. "Of course," May added, "there is another solution. We could all go out there and chop down this stupid tree." As she had expected, cries of protest arose all around her. Perversely, the glorious tree had become an important part of their lives. They each waited all winter for this beacon to light up and herald spring. And so, John Jay and May were married as soon as the shell of their little house was built. A causeway of sturdy beach stones was built over the marshland to facilitate passage to it from both yards. John and Jeremy worked like furies to make all shipshape before winter. They worked side by side, talking constantly. They had all the wasted years of self-imposed silence to bridge. The two wives beamed at each other as they went about their chores, and the old folks basked in the autumn sun, warming their bones against the coming gales. That was The Pear Tree by J. Stella Saunier. It's from a book called Fables from an Island, published by the author on Block Island. I read a few stories. She has 3 books, I believe. I have all 3 in my home, in my own private collection. And I read a few today. That one I liked the best so far. That's how I'll end. All right. Thanks for coming to Frankenstein Tea. I hope you have a great afternoon. I hope you're having gorgeous weather, and I hope you're all staying safe. Mask up, wash your hands, social distance. 3 easy steps. Okay? Do it. Peace.